He plays the accordion and has serious puppet skills. He's been beaten pretty handily, don't tell him we said so, at Connect 4 by kids in the Cure Hospital in Zambia. And every word he speaks on the radio or writes down in a book is infused with humor and meaning, and often both at the same time. Our very own Brant Hansen is here. Welcome to Spirit 105.3.
Thank you. I love being on my own station. This is awesome.
We made coffee for you as well, so that's good.
Good. Thank you.
It's been so much fun reading your book. I was just addicted scrolling through the pages last night. And one of my favorite lines in there is, maybe you're a nerd like me, or maybe you play left tackle for the Seahawks. It doesn't matter. The message in this book is for you. And so, A, thank you for mentioning our Hawks. And B, you say that you want this book to be immediately practical. So what is that one thing you want everybody to take away from it?
Well, I'm trying to take a shot. I feel like you need a vision for how to live if you're a man or a woman or whatever. But a lot of guys, we've just had masculinity deconstructed. And I understand the need for that. I think a lot of that's good. But it's like, okay, so what's the vision? And the one thing I want people to walk away with is we're supposed to be keepers of the garden. That's the job that Adam was given. And that's a beautiful thing when we do it. So I spend the book kind of unpacking why that's such an awesome thing to be and why you can do that no matter where you're coming from or how old you are or what your strengths are. So that's the idea, and I hope it inspires people.
I like the way you phrase it. The question saying, so now what exactly are men supposed to do if, we're not supposed to do this or that, and what's left? And it seems like a lot of guys are kind of throwing their hands up and going, I don't know what I'm supposed to do or be.
Yeah, and they check out, and it becomes this passive thing too, which is also toxic. There's different ways of being toxic, but what I'm trying to say is there is something distinctly masculine about this keeper of the garden role where we protect people, we make people feel secure, we make the vulnerable able to thrive and flourish in our spheres of influence. Like, that's when we're at our best. And I think, and I point this out like over and over using different stories, but women find it very attractive when we are that guy who provides security for people, who's willing to act to do it. And you can see it with Zelensky, the guy from Ukraine, from Ukraine right now. Like, women just find he's like an international heartthrob, they say. Like, he's that way. It's not because he's a male model. I mean, he's a 5'7", probably average-looking comedian guy. Nothing wrong with that. But now women are like, wow. And it's because he's saying, I will stay. I'm not leaving. I'm going to protect the women and children. I'm going to protect our homes. And that's all there is to it. I'm going to do what it takes. And you can see how that resonates with women, because I think they can see that when we are a keeper of the garden, that's when we're at our best.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Every time you see him, he's in a T-shirt. He's not in a tuxedo. He's just a regular guy who's made a really hard choice.
Yeah. And shouldn't that point something out? Like, if you're a young guy, I'm trying to tell him, like, understand, like, anytime women are asked, like, what's the most attractive occupation? It's always the same stuff. It's firefighter, rescuer, first responders. I mean, what does that tell you about who we are, again, when we're at our best? Because I think women intuit it. They know. So I've seen this played out in a million different ways when a guy actually is willing to act to protect his family. He's willing to do what it takes, not out of anger, but out of a willingness to protect the vulnerable. There's something really right about that, deeply right.
One of the things I loved reading in your book was when you took on kangaroo duty in Afghanistan. Would you describe your encounter with that little tiny 1-pound person? You called her a scrap of life, and how that changed you, Brant.
Yeah, well, the first time I went to Afghanistan, this was with Cure Hospitals, but they asked me to do kangaroo duty. I had no idea what they're talking about. And it turns out it's just you hold a preemie so that they can get some skin time. And her parents had given up on her, and she was 1 pound. At the time, did not have a name. And I was left there by myself with her. I had to unbutton my shirt and hold this 1 pound, tiny, tiny human. And I thought the whole time, I was just rocked there for a couple hours with her, and she looked up at me, and I was looking down at her, but it's like, she's got no prestige, no power, no money, no celebrity, nothing, not even a name. But God, as I understand him in the Bible, knows her, and she's royalty to him. And that made me think that if this 1 pound scrap of life is royalty to God, I like that about God. Like, that makes me love him. There's something about a God like that. And I do feel like my role, and I've been growing into this is a protector of people like her, like, because she's in my garden. Like, these are people that I can have an effect on. And a gardener makes a place, a keeper of the garden, to protect, and a place where the vulnerable can thrive and flourish. I feel like that's our job.
So for many of us, the garden includes kids, our own kids. You did an interesting thing, reclaiming the word shelter as a positive word for parents in terms of sheltering.
Yeah, I was kind of baffled by this. I had friends that told me, hey, you're sheltering your kids. And my response was, of course, when our kids were growing up in the house, my response was, of course I'm sheltering my kids. That's what you do. I'm a dad. Of course and I shelter people who need shelter. Of course I do. And it's not about, I don't want them to ever be in the world. I mean, now my son's at Yale. My daughter went to school in Manhattan and whatnot. And like, it wasn't the goal to never make an impact in the real world. It's like, but while they're little, they're vulnerable. And it is my job to shelter these vulnerable little minds, or these vulnerable little people, so that I can shape their character in a way that when they are 18, 19, or leave the house, they're ready to take on the world and more responsibility. So I gradually give them more and more freedom. But the idea that you're not supposed to shelter your kids, I'm like, Dad, that's job one. Of course you are.
So good. Brant, I had to look up your fancy French word, and I had to press, pronounce 5 times today. Ennui. Ennui. Am I saying it right? Ennui?
Ennui.
Ennui. See, I knew I was going to say it wrong. Ennui, but it's like this sense of aimlessness or purposelessness. And you were talking about how so often for you it's video games. For me, it's reading. Yeah. I could read till the cows come home. And it's like, oh, you do it for hours and hours, and then you just feel like icky. And I want to dive into that because I really, this book is not just for men, it's for women. I understood ennui. Did I say it right that time?
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. And you're right. The point I was trying to make, too, is a lot of times we feel meaninglessness in our lives is very palpable for so many people in our culture. And the reason is we're doing meaningless stuff.
Yes.
Like, of course, I'll sit there and play FIFA on my PlayStation, for example. That's my big one. But I can play it for hours and not even notice that the sun went down and came back up, and I haven't gone to the bathroom or anything. I don't even know. But if that's the main content of my life, if that's a huge part of my life, I will feel meaninglessness. I will feel ennui. I will struggle for that. By the same token, like Dallas Willard said, I've never met anybody who's actively engaged in serving people who feels meaningless. Like, if you're actively engaged in serving people, you're not going to feel meaninglessness. But if we're doing meaningless things that actually don't matter, of course we're going to feel that way. And we've all felt that way. But it's tough in our culture because our culture is always trying to get us to do meaningless stuff.
What do you say to somebody like a guy who hears some of this and says, "That's me. I feel terrible. How do I change?"
Oh, well, I say you have a huge opportunity. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to know this. Like, you can turn. I'm trying to tell guys, too, I'm learning this the hard way, and I have learned it. But what you pay attention to determines everything. What you are paying attention to, in fact, that's really the only thing that you have to pay. Everybody's vying for your attention. They're fighting for it, everything in the world. But if I put my attention on the right things, on things that are true and pure and noble and lovely and admirable, I become a different guy. And that's available for everybody. Like being loyal to God in spite of myself, actually being loyal to him. I become a different guy over time, and what we're becoming is what matters. So don't get depressed about where you are. It's just the fact that there's an opportunity to go, hey, wait, I do now know what my mission is, and to the extent that I can, the people around me are going to be more secure and safe. Even if they don't know it, your neighborhood should be safer because you're there, whether they know it or not. Because that's when you're at your best, when you're in that mindset of, I protect the vulnerable. I am here to provide security, to not just protect them, but to cultivate and let people flourish that otherwise wouldn't. That's why it's a betrayal if you create insecurity in your own home, or you make women feel insecure. We wouldn't need a Me Too movement if men lived as keepers of the garden, because women would never feel threatened. Because we're not here to be threatened. We're to protect against the threats, not be the threat.
Wow. I have a proverb for you. It has nothing to do with an ox, because I know you included a proverb with an ox in the book.
Yeah.
But when I think of your words, whether they're in print or they're on the radio, or like Sherry says, in your home, because she's been there and she's witnessed it, I think of this proverb, the one that says, a word aptly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. And,
oh, totally.
And I am so thankful for you. I know Steve is thankful for you.
Absolutely.
There's like 1% of ennui in your life. I mean, seriously.
Well, thank you. And you know what's really exciting? I was just going to tell you guys. I know this isn't a brag. It's more of a thank you, Lord. It's the #1 bestseller on Amazon.
Wow.
Wow.
In its category, which is amazing. Like not just hot news seller or something, like bestseller. And I did not anticipate that, but it makes me really happy because obviously you want whatever you do, you want people to see it. But deeper than that, like, my gosh, this would change everything if young guys in particular understood what we're supposed to be. It would change everything.
Oh, this is awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited, and I'm very thankful to God for that, and I hope it continues. Even if it's not my book, somebody else will come and rewrite it in their own way. If that goes #1, I'll be just as excited, I promise.
That's awesome.
We're so thankful for you. Brant Hansen, author of the book, The Men We Need. What are men supposed to do? Now we know.
Thanks,
you.
Brant. Love you guys and your show.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Love you and Sherry. Take care.